From KVUE News in Austin, you're watching Texas This Week with Ashley Goudeau.
Good Sunday morning. Texas lawmakers are passing a flurry of bills these days. So in this morning's 3 Things to Know in Texas Politics, let's talk legislation. Every session, a battle ensues between the state of Texas and city of Austin for some policy the city passes. And this session is no exception. The Austin Council passed several policies contrary to the governor's positions. And this week, the Senate passed a bill aimed at one of them. Senate Bill 23 bans cities and counties from reducing the percentage of their budgets that go to law enforcement unless voters approve the move. In other words, they can't take money away from police departments unless voters give it the green light. If a city or county reduces the police budget without voter approval, they will not be allowed to increase taxes. The bill is now in the House's hands. The House passed a bill to allow eligible Texans to carry handguns without a permit. House Bill 1927 makes the license to carry optional so that Texans 21 and older who are eligible to carry a gun in the state can carry one openly or concealed without a permit. The bill now goes to the Senate. Transgender children were the subject of bills that saw movement this week. The Senate passed SB 29, which requires public school athletes to compete in sports based on the sex listed on their original birth certificate, not the gender they identify with. It does make an exception for trans boys, allowing them to participate in boys' sports if a girl team is not available. And the House and Senate committees both took up bills to essentially ban hormone therapies and surgeries for trans children who are transitioning. House committees have just about 3 weeks left to consider bills and send them to the full House for consideration. And a Central Texas-based group is hoping a bill they're backing can make it out of committee. Mimi Stiles, founder and president of Measure, joined me to talk about the bill. Mimi, for people who are not familiar with Measure, tell us about the organization.
Definitely. So Measure, we're a research and public education organization. We are led and founded by Black women. We are just very interested in people of color using their own data to tell their own story. And so that's really the work that we do. We're based in Austin, but we are now reaching into different parts of the country with our work.
And one of the key things that you said there and what you do is you use the data. Talk to us about just how big of a role that plays into everything that you guys do.
Absolutely. Well, data can be very interesting, right? There's a lot of bias in data. Data can tell stories in any way that you use it. And so what we believe at Measure is that data has not been used very effectively in ways to produce the change that we want to see in social justice, in the social justice ecosystem. And so what we do at Measure is that we partner with Black and Brown-led organizations. We provide them free data and evaluation support in order to tell a story. And that story, in many cases, and the work that we do, is story of injustice, whether it's education justice, health justice, criminal justice, or economic justice. We partner with organizations in order to make sure that that they are bringing facts to the table.
And you like to use these facts to try to make change at a local and a state level. And in fact, you guys had a bill that was heard in committee this week. Talk to us about what you like to call the Measure Bill.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a game changer. So HB 3485 is what we're calling the Measure Bill. It's sponsored by Representative Goodwin. And it really offers this but a solution, one solution to breaking the school to prison pipeline. We've talked about the school to prison pipeline, about breaking that school to prison pipeline in so many different systems and ways. But what we have not done yet is we haven't really given the power of data to parents. So what HB 3485 is asking all schools to do in Texas is to provide the data of disproportionate disciplinary action on all kids. And so when parents have the data, what we've learned is that parents will get active when we know we will go. And so that's really what HB 3485 is.
When we talk about the school to prison pipeline, there are people who may not be familiar with what we see happening within our schools and how it impacts our prison system. So talk to us about what exactly is the school to prison pipeline. And of course, I know you have data to back it all up.
That's a really good question. The school to prison pipeline are really the policies that are set up, the practices that are happening in our schools that disproportionately impact Black and brown children and pushing them out of school and into this atmosphere of criminalization. And so what we've seen, according to a recent study, is that Black and brown children are more likely to be suspended or expelled from Texas schools than white students. For example, you asked about the data, right? So just recently in 2018 and 2019, we found that Black students were nearly 5 times more likely than white students to be disciplined. We saw that Black students made up only 13.48% of the student population, but it gets to be even worse too when you look at the disciplinary rates with Black girls. We know that Black female students make up about 7.6% of the school population, but they made up about 20% of the reported disciplinary action, and that's according to OCR data. And so, and this is not something that's central to Texas. It's national. This is the way we have set up this system to treat our students. And so we at Measure are really about how do we operationalize data in a way that it gives power to the parents so that they know what's happening in their school so that they can then show up with data and armed with information that could possibly make change in their schools.
There may be people who say, okay, well, these students are disciplined more, they're suspended more, but how does that correlate to prison? Explain that for us.
Well, so when you have a more likelihood of being disciplined in school, sometimes that means that you're being referred to the justice system. And so it's this very quick pathway to the juvenile justice system. And many times we see that the same kids that are being disciplined in school are kids that may have had touches with Child Protective Services or may have had, some other things in their home happen to them to whereas they need support. So we're asking for, we don't need additional disciplinary action when a kid just needs help. Where are the counselors? Where are the people that are going to be that village to that student that needs that support? And another thing is that we're also finding that many of these children are kids that have some type of, that are able differently. And so we are not addressing root issues. It seems as if the answer for many teachers or for many school administrators is more so treat an issue with discipline rather than understanding.
This bill to me seems like it would not only be able to help the parents to want to take action, but also the teachers and the administrators. If a teacher perhaps has a bias that they do not recognize that they are sending certain students to the office more than other students of a certain, gender and race, this could open their eyes too, right?
You know what? I think you are absolutely right. And we have several teachers that are backing this bill as well. They are also very interested in what they can do to break the school to prison pipeline. One organization that comes to mind is Educators in Solidarity. They have came around this bill in a way that I did not expect at all, writing letters, making phone calls. It is truly an opportunity for the village, the American village, the Texas village, to come together and say, give us the data, give us the information, give us the power to make change. And some might argue, well, the data is out there, right? They might say, go ahead onto TEA's website and you can download the data. The problem is, open data is not always open and accessible to everyone. The Measure Bill, again, is that game changer. It's saying, give us the data in a way that we understand it. How can we have the data in a snapshot to know exactly what's happening at our schools so that we can be more informed and make those decisions about what's happening with our kids?
You can read more about the bill on KVUE.com. That's Texas This Week.